Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're located around the globe. My name is nemesisjg, and I'm your host of this Man Cave Gaming Podcast, a podcast where we really just talk it out and discuss nothing but video games, a passion of mine that I've always had since I was about the age of 3 years old myself. Ever since I've had my first ever gaming consoles from my parents, that being a PS1. And I gotta say to y'all, man, I used to love that little damn gaming console of mine, that little gray box, and I'm sad that I don't actually own it anymore because it's literally where I just started my gaming, man. I can remember growing up as a kid and coming back home all the time, just playing something like Crash Bandicoot or Spyro, hell, Medieval, and Frogger. I'm not sure if anyone knows of Medieval by any chance. I know they just made a remake not too long ago on the PS4, but I remember, playing the PS1 version many times and enjoying that game quite a bit. But no, I can remember myself playing games of that nature and, starting it off pretty much from there. And my love for gaming has never changed ever since then. In fact, it's funny to me because my family, and mostly my dad and my mom, to be quite honest, they always thought that, the gaming thing would be kind of temporary, that eventually that I would grow up and kind of lose love for gaming. And I guess it's kind of expected to think that way because, back in the day, it seemed that gaming used to be a thing that only kids would do. It's kind of like a time waster, a toy. I wasn't exactly born in the era when gaming started with the Atari 2600 or the NES or Super Nintendo for that matter. But I'm honestly curious, what the mindset for anyone that may be watching this podcast, what the mindset was back then when people were gaming during those generations of games, because I'm pretty sure that era was completely different from even my era on PS1 gaming when 3D games were just starting to become a thing. But it's funny, the reason why I bring that up is because, I always think that my parents expected my love for gaming to kind of change and maybe go away as I grew up, because probably that's what was the common thing, during those early generations of gaming. But I think I think just seeing the changes firsthand with the inclusion of things like the internet and how it's actually, affected everything. We're not even talking about just like, your normal businesses or how people communicate to each other. How it literally has just the introduction of the internet has really changed everything, including gaming. Because during my era of gaming, we started off with just having nothing but having to be in person if you wanted to play with somebody. But now there's all these online services and all these like online features that gaming has nowadays. And I think kind of like the reason why my love for gaming pretty much I would say never went away is just seeing those changes happened from the very beginning. Because I was born in 95, and the weird thing about my era of where I've grown up is that I'm kind of like stuck in between of like when things were how they were before the internet came over and changed everything. And then also at the same time, I was also born in the middle of that era when or not just gaming, but just how life has changed as the internet became more popular and started changing how we started doing things. So, I just find it kind of funny because I believe that part of that was the reason why, my love for gaming, has never gone away, because the popularity of it now reaching to thousands of people and several people. Like, I don't know if anyone, grew up around the 90s and whatnot, or even remembers remotely how gaming used to be. Gaming used to be kind of like a thing where, it was kind of like just to be isolated. You do things by yourself. And it was I would say it was kind of severely frowned upon when I was, I would say elementary school. Probably middle school, even somewhat in high school. High school, it seemed like it was starting to become more popular and started becoming a thing that people were okay with. And I want to say that was when, in high school, is when online gaming stuff started taking over. Your things like your Call of Duties and whatnot. And I believe that's kind of like the reason why I stuck with it. Even though, I was expected, in a teen, during my teen years, my parents were thinking that was going to be the time when it started, my love for gaming was starting to die out. It was because, the fact that gaming started becoming a lot more social and you could just connect from your very home and play with somebody at their house. That was just awesome to see that change happen before very eyes. I want to say that was more so like a Halo thing now that I'm backtracking and thinking of it. I want to say that Halo 2 really started that trend of the popularity. Not saying that it started it, but it was more so the popularity started becoming a thing with the OG Xbox and Halo 2. But for me, it was, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and also Black Ops. Because I had a PS3 and I had some friends that also had PS3s as well. And, we would just play literally Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops. Literally as soon as we came up from school, all the way down to 5 a.m. at times and just play as long as we wanted to. And I think that's kind of like, had this effect of how it started with gaming starting to reach the masses for the most part. And we've seen several changes. I mean, nowadays, there's overhyped gaming news trailers that we see, blowing up and whatnot. And in fact, we also see differences in how games are now being developed and the process of it being released. Or, now we're seeing games being distributed differently. I mean, back then, everything used to be a physical copy. And nowadays, everything's now a digital copy. Everything's starting to become digital copies. I mean, now if you take a look in, if you're a PC gamer like myself nowadays, it's kind of rare to ever see a physical copy of a video game. I mean, I think I remember showing off on Twitch stream that I actually had a physical copy of Battlefield 4. And that's rare to come by. You don't really see an actual physical CD of games nowadays. Usually everything now is on Steam being digitally distributed, and it's starting to slowly have the same effect even with consoles. I mean, if you look at the newly released PS5 and the newly released Xbox Series X and Series S, you have, digital only consoles now. Although it's kind of funny that I think about it because, I know I'm going off tangent here, but it's not, it's something that we have never seen before. I mean, we've seen it in the past before with digital only consoles with things of that PSP. I remember there was a PSP released by Sony that was digital only. It flopped, but I feel like it was way before its time. I think if it was released nowadays, it probably would have done better. But back on topic though. No, you see, differences of how online and the inclusion of the internet has just, distributed, has affected how games are nowadays. So distribution of gaming now, distribution of gaming itself, or how games are released. And what I mean by that is that, back then, not saying that there was ever any bugs in games or whatnot. I mean, there was definitely always some kind of glitch or bug. I mean, that's why we have speedruns and the popularity of GDQ and all that sort of stuff. But, there was never a time I could think of when games were super buggy the way they are. And I guess this actually segues me into my first topic. I know this is super into it, but super long to try to segue into it. But I don't recall ever seeing gaming having this many bugs. Maybe I am naive. Maybe I am super nostalgic. I'm not saying that there was ever any game that was a buggy mess to the point that was unplayable, but I've never seen so many games nowadays be as buggy and unplayable as they are. And, one game that's kind of taking the news as of lately, I want to say the last 2 weeks, I haven't kept up when the game was released, but Cyberpunk 2077 from CD Projekt Red. If you guys know, I'm pretty sure it's pretty much well documented. It's pretty much well known at this point. Cyberpunk 2077 released, at least on the old generation consoles, the PS4 and Xbox One, released with a multiple of bugs to the point that it was almost virtually unplayable. In fact, I was actually even told during my Twitch streams by a lot of people that the game at times would run 15 frames per second or 20 frames per second. Now, I did not see day one all the bugs. Didn't actually even buy Cyberpunk 2077, not because I didn't want it. A funny little side story about it is that I actually love CD Projekt Red and I love their products for the most part. I mean, I'm a big guy of GOG and I love The Witcher 3. To me, probably one of the best games of this past generation that's came out. But, I actually did not have money to get Cyberpunk 2077 at the time when I wanted to get it because I was busy holiday shopping for the family and whatnot. And boy, did I have to say I might have actually dodged a bullet on that one. It wasn't until like I want to say 2 days ago where I actually decided to actually look into a YouTube video to see what everybody was talking about, because I remember when the game was released during my Twitch stream. I think I was streaming Dino Crisis at the time. Shameless plug-in, twitch.tv/nemesisjg if you guys want to check the stream out. But back to that's beside the point. I was looking into, looking at some of these bugs at Cyberpunk 2077 because I had one of my viewers telling me how their fiance was playing the game and they had a glitch where their save data was corrupted and it wasn't working anymore. And that sounds ridiculous to me. I've had many people tell me about, glitches where the AI is just so horrendously bad and they'll sometimes just spawn in the middle of nowhere and it's just kind of comically bad. And there's other people that tell me that they get like glitches at times where they have to like drive a certain point. The car that they have to drive is stuck and they actually can't get to the certain objective because they need to use said vehicle in order to progress the story even more. And I was looking into it and I'm just kind of like shocked to see the amount of bugs in the game. And that's kind of like, disheartening to me, because the reason why I think that's disheartening is because Cyberpunk 2077 was developed by CD Projekt Red. And I don't know if anyone knows, I don't know if I might come off as a fanboy, but I love CD Projekt Red. I actually held them in high regard as one of the better developers out there. So it's a little discouraging for me personally to see a developer that I was like, you know what? There's a lot of developers out there that are not doing very well. They're doing, in my opinion, like practices that I personally don't enjoy, but CD Projekt Red is killing it. And to see them, I guess you could say like fall from grace kind of hurts me a little bit, because it's like, man, I'm going to steal this a little bit from one of my favorite YouTubers, Angry Joe, but it was kind of like, Star Wars Episode 3 where, when Obi-Wan Kenobi looks at them and goes like, you were the chosen one. You weren't supposed to join them. You were supposed to beat them. And it's just like, man, CD Projekt Red, you were one of the chosen ones, man. You were supposed to not join the industry and fuck us, and, screw us over. And, so it sucks that, a developer I held in high regard, because I was a huge fan of The Witcher 3. I just said a minute ago that it's like, to me, it was one of the best games that I've played as of lately. This past generation, I do hold in high regard. It's like, in my personal opinion, it's like one of the top 5 games that came out in recent years. So, and not only that, too, I'm a big fan of their platform, GOG. I think GOG has done a fantastic job reliving games or fixing games that pretty much have very much been forgotten. And when they made it over to, I guess you could say, to present day, they've been buggy and don't really run well due to Windows 10. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault or anything, because you can't really predict future hardware and how it's going to do with older with stuff that was developed for older hardware. So it's not really anyone's fault. But, to see them, bring a lot of these classic games that are kind of forgotten about and have a platform for them to work properly. For me, one game that stands out for me is Fallout 3. I played Fallout 3 religiously. I never got a chance to play it on PC at the time, because I didn't have a PC at the time, and I wasn't even PC gaming at the time neither. But to see Fallout 3, and I remember I bought it on Steam first, it didn't work properly for me. In fact, it wouldn't even start up for me. And so that was kind of disappointing, that the game has so many problems to the point that even the Steam page itself says, do not buy this game if you're running anything past, I think, Windows 7, I want to say, is what the Steam page says. But I went and got it the GOG, and, I read a bunch of reviews about it before I bought it. I even looked up YouTube VODs, and I wanted to give him a shot, and that was the first game I actually bought on GOG. And, it worked flawlessly, and I was so shocked about it, and I was enamored that it actually worked, and that's when I started having a love. And, Silent Hill 4, a game that I personally don't really enjoy myself, but I know there's a lot of fans of the Silent Hill franchise that enjoy that game. But, there was never, Konami's kind of dropped the ball when it comes to, remastering, remaking, Silent Hill stuff. it was awesome to see that in the GOG, on the GOG website, or on the GOG platform, sorry, that the game actually runs well and works really well. So, combine all that, I was like, I think CD Projekt Red is doing an exceptional job, in this industry where a lot of developers I feel that I personally used to like aren't doing too hot anymore. So where does this lead me to? Where does this lead me to? Why am I going on a tangent about this? I pose this question to anybody that's, watching this podcast episode is, are there any developers nowadays that you can trust in? Because it feels like to me, and this sucks too to say, is that when I start, putting my trust on a developer in current day gaming, I feel like I get let down after a while, and it sucks because it's like, man, it goes back to this like that Star Wars 3 reference that I made. It's like, man, you were the chosen one, and then somehow you just screw it all up. Like for me, my first, I can remember my first developer that I can say that and I've always talked about this before, but a developer that I personally used to look up to, and I've actually mentioned him, was Konami. I said that I played a lot of PS1 games, and it's one of my favorite franchises that I had from the PS1 era was the Metal Gear Solid games. I actually played that game when I was younger. Probably wasn't supposed to, but I did anyway. I don't think my parents knew much about ESRB ratings, but I did play it, and I loved it. Awesome. I played the franchise. I've been a fan of the franchise ever since then. But Konami was known for like amazing games like Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, the Contra series back, if you want to take it back all the way to the NES era, you got your what is it? It's escaping my mind for some reason. Castlevania, there we go. I don't know why that was escaping my mind for some odd reason. Not sure why that game was escaping my mind for some odd reason. But I think about these games that Konami had, and dude, they were killing it. Whenever you would see the name Konami, it was kind of like the effect that I had with CD Projekt Red. Take your time with it. I trusted it. Buying it day one because it's a damn good product. But then somewhere along the line, I don't know when. And honestly, I really want to know when this started happening. I want to say it was probably during the PS3 360 era. Something just happened with Konami. And they just started moving on from, making quality AAA title games. I don't know what management moves that they made that exactly changed the direction of how they were seeing things. Because, unfortunately, they started moving away to pachinko machines. And they started making, noticing that they were making more money off of something like a pachinko machine. And I want to say they were also making a lot of money off the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game as well. I mean, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card games are still, the online trading card game is still a thing. And I wonder how much money that's actually making them because it's free to play. And it's been going on for years. That video game, that free to play video game has gone on for years and it's still holding up. So honestly, I do wonder. But what I'm trying to say is that at some point, there was some kind of management change and Konami just wasn't the same anymore. Bethesda. I think Bethesda's really well documented. Really, really well documented. I mean, I don't think I need to go too much detailed into this. I mean, Bethesda at one point was like the darling of the gaming community, right? I mean, you start off with like something like Elder Scrolls Morrowind and have a hit in your hands with Fallout 3 after you buy it. And somewhere along the lines, man, something happened with Bethesda. I don't know what exactly happened, and I just wonder if it really was another one of those cases where management kind of came into play and changed everything. And, this is the reason why I'm comparing Konami and Bethesda, because, both have kind of like a similar thing where they have a game that's like everyone's just like, damn, this was damn good. Make another one. We're buying it day one. We trust you. But then somewhere along the line, something just kind of changed with Bethesda. Bethesda, they were a little bit different. It's kind of more so about like, there was like bugs that was in the Morrowind game. Then they made it over to Oblivion. And then the same bugs happened to Skyrim. Fallout 3 had some similar bugs. And then, Fallout 4 came out. And then you have the debacle that's known as Fallout 76. That seems as if that game just kind of never fixed the bugs that were in Fallout 4. And plus, it was well documented that a lot of the bugs that came out during the initial release of Fallout 4 were found in Fallout 76, which is kind of crazy to say that. That darling title of Bethesda as being like, the pioneer of the gaming industry goes away. It goes away simply because of that mistake, I guess you could say. I mean, I wouldn't say it's really mistakes. I mean, they had multiple chances to fix it and correct it, right? But eventually the gaming universe kind of said, nope, we're done here. We're done here. And now this leads us to present day. CD Projekt Red. Where I want to say that the reason why a lot of people have probably lost their trust in CD Projekt Red is not really because of like, oh, you made one bad game, let's put the pitchforks, right? I see on YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, people that are defending CD Projekt Red with, how the release of Cyberpunk 2077 came out. And they're defending them for it. And they're like, okay, it's one game, you let it go, right? I could see where they're coming from, kind of, right? I could see where they're coming from, kind of. But I want to say that the reason why a lot of people are pulling out the pitchforks and torches really early on CD Projekt Red is really because of how other developers that have screwed up in the past, like I mentioned previously, have been given so many chances to correct the ship. Now, we're not really going to give CD Projekt Red the chance because it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, okay, well, we've seen an example of what happened with Bethesda after we've given them so many chances. So, why the hell would we give CD Projekt Red a chance if, we've already seen how this plays out after you forgive them and still, let it go. And despite all the problems that they had at release, millions of people still buy it. I want to say that's really what ended up happening here with how now CD Projekt Red is starting to get that title of like, we shouldn't trust them. And I'm honestly curious as to, what this means in the future for CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077, because I mean, the game is out. And I'm curious as to how many copies the game has sold, because, it is one thing to hype up a game, right? And then it flops because it just wasn't, because it was broken, it was a mess, it didn't really, resonate with the population very well. It's another thing where it seems like the game was deceiving everybody. Because, I was looking at and I'm going to reference once again Angry Joe, because I was watching one of his videos and this kind of like inspired the topic. Because, it's interesting because like, from my understanding, apparently, like, what they were broadcasting and showcasing is they were showing every single gameplay element and aspect of the game through high-end PCs. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a high-end PC myself, right? I game frequently on my PC, so I need to have that high-end tech, right? To play things at those pretty graphics. But, from my understanding, actually, a lot of people do not have those high-end PCs. And on top of that, too, even people that are gaming on PC, they tend to be kind of like in the mid-lower spec, kind of population. So you have that problem there. And then on top of that, too, you promised that, there was a lot of promises that, that the console version was going to do really well. It might not look pretty, but it was going to at least run really well. But they never showed off any gameplay of it. So it's kind of like one of those, issues where you're hyping up a game, but in deception. You're not really like showing the true product. And that's a problem, right? Because we saw that with Fallout 76. Fallout 76 didn't do very well. Now, numbers-wise, people are still playing it. And I'm honestly curious what the numbers were after all the drama was gone. Because, initially Fallout 76 had low sales when it first came out. I want to say it did. I think they barely cracked over like something like 2 million initially. Initially, keyword initially. Again, I mean, it's gotta be successful now if they're still supporting it and releasing DLC. And I think they actually just released a DLC just recently, actually. Now what I'm curious about is Cyberpunk 2077 going to have that same effect, and will they recover? Because this is another case, like I'm, referencing Fallout 76 earlier. Are they going to be able to fix the game and then find a way to get into gamers' hearts, I guess you can say, for lack of a better term, and convince the gaming community to, forgive them and get the game, and have them play the game again? I don't know is the honest question, because, I've seen this story play out many a times. I've seen this same story play out many of times. But I've never seen it for a single player experience, though. That's the thing, right? I can think about games such as Battlefield 4. I don't know if anyone remembers the release of Battlefield 4. I do, because I was a day one buyer of Battlefield 4. The servers didn't work for almost 2 weeks. I want to say the only game mode servers that actually worked when you played online were the TDMs, was a TDM playlist. And I think maybe Squad Rush. That's about it. But everything else did not work. That launch was unplayable, and it was to the point that EA shareholders were suing EA because of how badly launched that game was. Because of how badly launched that game was. That was a mess. But they eventually did fix it, and now the game, and it sold really well. And I think a lot of people that enjoy Battlefield, such as myself, I would argue, there's arguments over there, but there's a lot of people that would say Battlefield 4 is probably the best Battlefield game. But again, that was an online game, guys. That was an online game, and that went through a lot of updates. And it went through hell and back to get that game fixed. Another game that I can think of on the top of my head is Rainbow Six Siege. Okay, I'm a huge fan of Rainbow Six Siege. But if anyone is a day one copy buyer like myself, because I actually owned that game on the Xbox One when I first played it, that launch was terrible. You couldn't find a game for an hour. You could not find a game for an hour. I'm not even joking. When you were trying to look for the matchmaking, there were times where you literally would stay in the matchmaking for 45 minutes before you find anybody. The hit registration was atrocious. I want to say that you could probably even still look it up on YouTube of people showing off the hit registration in that game to show how atrocious it was. The balancing of the game was god awful to the point that it was almost unplayable at times. I want to say there were times when you'd play characters such as Blitz and you could hip fire with a red laser on the pistol and just one tap somebody in the head. It was insane. That game had so many issues, but it eventually they started patching it, they started fixing it. And then eventually it's now one of the most played games in gaming right now currently, online gaming. But once again, it's another product of an online game though. One more example I can think of, actually two more I can think of, probably three. I can think of a bunch, but I'll bring this one up because I think it's a little bit more known. I don't know if people remember it as much, but Elder Scrolls Online, okay? ZeniMax Studios is on Elder Scrolls Online. I don't know if anyone remembers Elder Scrolls Online, but God, the release was, not once, but twice, the release was god-awful, okay? The first one was just the original ESO, the MMO where you had to pay for every month to play it. It was empty, and in fact, it was such a grind fest that at times it felt like it was, not only did you have to pay for the service, but it seemed like it incentivized you trying to pay to make any progress so you can get loot in the game. And that's a huge problem with MMOs. And eventually they started fixing the game, and then they released it as Tamriel Online for, when they released it on the PS4 and the Xbox One, and then re-released it on the, on the PC back when it was no longer a subscription-based service. Somehow it was managed that game was able to be screwed up still, despite it being re-released. I remember I would always get kicked out of the servers so many times, man. Day one, I was another day one adopter of that game. All right, you're starting to learn this lesson, by the way, over here about, a topic of me not buying things day one anymore, which I'll get into later. But back to the topic before I get off tangent here. But yes, I I was a day one adopter of both things. I was a day one adopter of the subscription-based ESO, and that was a loot grindy fest that felt like it was supposed to be paid to play, paid to win in that game. And then there was the other one, Tamriel's release or whatever it was called. I got it on the PS4, and man, I got kicked out of so many servers that I actually just gave up on the game. I gave it like a month, I want to say. Gave up on the game. And from my understanding, the population wasn't doing too hot once, wasn't doing very hot at the time, with all the problems that were going on the when it was released on console and whatnot. But then eventually they ended up releasing the Tamriel, the one Tamriel patch, whatever it was. They fixed the problem where it's like, if you're this race in this class, you can't be with somebody else from this race in this class because, we gotta keep it true to the Elder Scrolls lore and whatnot. And they found out that didn't work. They gave it up. There's all right, whatever, screw that. We're going to get that one Tamriel patch, and it is now done really well. In fact, I play ESO at times, and I quite enjoy Elder Scrolls Online. I still come back to it and play, despite me being a sucker and buying it all the time. But this is once again another example of this is an online game that's seen that resurgence. This is all like examples of me just saying to say, I have never seen it done for a single player game before, where a single player game is botched completely at launch and, eventually makes a resurgence. I can't really think of any example. Like, I'm really trying to think of an example right now, from the top of my head, but I really cannot think of an example. If anyone's that's watching this podcast has made it to this point, let me know if there's ever a single player game that was botched completely at launch, but then eventually it was, eventually it was fixed and then it was actually popular again. Because I don't see it at all. It's so rare. I want to say I'm not even talking about in terms of the gameplay is just bad or anything. That's not what I'm talking about here, by the way. I'm talking about more so the game is literally so buggy that you cannot play it. Because one game that I could think of that maybe came close, just maybe, and that's only because, no, I don't even want to say it was even that close, to be honest. I want to say that it's just there because it's comically kind of bad. Even the game itself is kind of regarded as bad. Of course, that's just my opinion. But I just think about Assassin's Creed Unity is about as close. I wonder how many, I'm actually kind of curious about the sales of that game now that I think about it. But that's really the only game I can think of that maybe did kind of well, but I want to say that part of the reason why it did well is because it was an early game that came out during the PS4 and Xbox One, and I want to say that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was actually the first real release on those consoles, because I know Assassin's Creed 4 made it to the PS4 and Xbox One, but it was first released on the PS3 and 360 before it made its release to the PS4 and Xbox One. I want to say Assassin's Creed Unity was the first. So I want to say that the only reason why I think that game did well, despite all the bugs in that game, and I don't even know if they even fixed the game because I played the game too. Again, another trend here of Nemesis, falling for, AAA studios and games that were, games that I probably shouldn't look forward to. But I do anyway, and I buy it, and then I get suckered into it, and then I waste my money, and I'm like, God dang it, guys, God dang it. But yeah, no, I can't really think of many, guys, as far as single player games. But what can what can CD Projekt Red do? I'm honestly kind of curious what you guys can think, because I mean, first they got to fix the game, right? They got to fix the game. Yeah, that's the first thing that comes in my mind. See, here's the problem, right? I would have to say they might have to give a free to play trial. I know it's kind of crazy to sound the sound of this, But like, you know how like I don't know if anyone plays online games as much as I do, but you know how like there's a frequently like a lot of online games that that make their free on games that are AAA games that they end up having like a free to play online weekend for people to play. They might have to go that route where they have like a you get like 2 hours to play this game for free at a random ass section of the game or something to showcase that, hey, this game works. This game is good now. It doesn't have its problem. Let us prove to you that it doesn't work. Or they're going to have to heavily discount it and hope for the best. It's one of those two options because, this is where the problem runs into, right? The problem that they run into is that unlike online games, once you do a single player experience, it doesn't change unless they update it, right? It's going to be, that single player experience is going to be that experience. And then it's not going to change any longer. That's the reason why online games can get away with it and make a resurgence at some point. Because it's different when it's like, it's different when you're doing something like PvPing versus something. Because you're having like some kind of thing being done versus an actual person. Versus, let's say, an AI or, something that's a story. Because a story isn't going to change. A story is not going to change. Unless if CD Projekt Red goes in there and just changes some like chapter of a story or something like that, it's not going to change. So they can't really go out with that same mindset of like, yeah, let's just make it free to play for everybody to play or something, because they're not going to make that money back somehow. And then you still run the risk of, and then you're still running the risk of this is that maybe they don't enjoy that 2 hours of what you present in a part of the game. Maybe that's not the best part of the game. So I just don't see what they can do with Cyberpunk 2077. So to me, it's going to be interesting to see how CD Projekt Red redeems this. The only way I can really see them redeeming this, I'm not even lying, I know this sounds so crazy out of left field, is that either they're gonna have to make some kind of like subscription like service that a lot of like platforms are doing, like EA and Ubisoft and Microsoft with their Game Pass, and GOG, with their own platform of GOG, they're going to have to do like some kind of like subscription-based service. And I would guarantee you that if they did have that, they would incentivize people to actually subscribe just to try it out. Or just give it to the Game Pass, or just like have some kind of deal with Microsoft and give it to the Game Pass. I mean, they already have Cyberpunk 2077 Xbox Series X console as a thing, although that's kind of a problem, right? Because you can't really play it. Now, with that being said, I'm not really sure how it is nowadays. I don't own the game. Don't plan to own the game after seeing its problems until I see some major fixes and maybe a discount myself. But, that's really the only like two ways that I can really see them fixing their messes with this one. Back to what I was saying is that, somehow making it like free to play for 2 hours, into like some, random part of the story for people to try out and see what they think. After they fix everything, or at least it's enough to, convince people that it's good enough to play, or give it to the Game Pass. But that's about it, guys. I can't really think about anything else that would fix Cyberpunk 2077. And with that being said, is there any developer that you can trust nowadays? I don't want to give a mantle to anybody, man. I don't, because it's hard for me. It's hard for me. But if I had to like say developers that I can probably think of, now that CD Projekt Red is not on my list anymore, there's really like 3 developers that I ever look forward to. Although there's one that I shouldn't do this, but I'm kind of giving a pass as well, only because they're under new management, which I'll get to in a moment. But I got 3 developers in my head that I can think about that I would say that I would still trust after that I can still trust after the problems that I've seen with with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077. My number 1 is From Software. From Software, for what it's worth. Now, I am going to admit this. I have not seen From Software do something else other than their Soulsborne series, and then Sekiro as well included in that. But let's be honest with ourselves. They borrowed the elements of, the Souls games to make Sekiro a thing. So I haven't really seen From Software do anything else ever since the popularity and the rise in Dark Souls. I am aware that they've done the Armored Core series. I am aware that they've done Kingsfield. Never played Kingsfield. Played Armored Core when I was a kid. And I hated it because it was hard as hell, okay? I couldn't even get past like the third level or something like that. I'll be honest. I did not know what was going on in that game. I don't think it was a bad game or anything, but I'm just saying that I just remember playing it on my OG Xbox, and I sucked at it. I was bad. I don't remember much about it. But From Software, for what it's worth, they're not perfect as far as, when it comes to like bugs and glitches are concerned. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But as far as like a product being fun and functional and working, I haven't really had too many problems with From Software. So I would actually have to say From Software is in my list of, devs that I still kind of trust. Now, the only thing that I challenge them about, is that I'm curious as to what they're going to do once they have to do something that's not Dark Souls related. We still don't even know what Eden Ring, I think is what it's called. Eden Ring is supposed to be like. I'm not entirely sure, so don't get at me with that one just yet. We haven't really seen too much news about it for the time being. So I do like what I'm seeing though. I think they're okay. I definitely would roll with them. I'm not gonna sit here and say that I can buy a day one copy of anything, mainly because I feel like I've been burned too much. But if you had to tell me, if I had to tell you, there's one company that I can probably trust, if I had to buy a game day one, I had to put my stock on it, my life on it, I would say From Software is probably my best bet. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Capcom. Capcom hasn't really burned me too much. I think the only, one game that I can definitely say, but I'm not really a Street Fighter fan, is Day One Street Fighter is really the last thing that I've seen them, kind of screw up a little bit. I remember that Street Fighter V when it came out with a lot of problems, well, not really many problems gameplay wise. It was playable, you could play it. It was just incomplete because there was no arcade mode, I want to say, initially when it launched. And I don't think there was a single player anything, to be quite honest with you. I think it was literally just made for their competitive scene or something like that. But other than that, Capcom has a pretty good track record to me as being a developer that I personally feel like I can trust. I don't, the resurgence of Resident Evil after them screwing up of RE6 so bad that it kind of put them in new and low lows. And in fact, actually, I don't think people remember this too well, but I think after the release of Lost Planet 3, I don't know if anyone remembers Lost Planet 3 by any chance, or the Lost Planet franchise for that matter. Love that franchise, by the way. Kind of sad to see it go. But Capcom was almost bankrupt. To the point that they had no money, that they had to actually start selling assets. Which is kind of crazy to think that, a big industry giant such as Capcom themselves was almost out. Which is kind of just crazy to me, to be quite honest. That's actually a a thing that almost happened. But nowadays they're killing it, right? They released RE7. Although it's mixed opinions by people that enjoy Resident Evil like myself, it did great. Resident Evil 2 Remake comes out. Phenomenal job. RE3 Remake, I personally enjoyed it. Not everybody did. There's a lot of people that didn't enjoy it. I actually really liked RE3 Remake. It was actually my favorite remake, even though I'm a little biased because my name is Nemesis and it comes from the Resident Evil franchise, RE3 to be specific. I liked it a lot. It worked really well. But at the end of the day, I can definitely say is this. It worked. The games actually worked, so I was okay with that. Although debatable, because now that I think about it, Resident Evil Resistance or whatever that multiplayer game is called, haven't touched it. Didn't do so hot. So, there is that too. But for the most part, for what I personally have seen from Capcom, if you had to once again put a gun to my head and ask me you got to buy a day one game, From Software, Capcom. Those are two companies that I would actually say that they're okay, that they do pretty well in. I should not give the benefit of doubt for this one, but I am, despite me having a love-hate relationship. And that should be definitely a podcast in its own right at some point. Nintendo. I own a Switch, and I personally really like the Switch. It is a technical marvel. It is impressive to see. It is definitely impressive to me to see how well the Nintendo Switch has done. Because I'm not going to lie to you, I was a doubter of Nintendo Switch when it first came out. I was looking at it like, this is stupid. This is dumb. A portable hybrid console. Why? And on top of it too, Nintendo came off of the Wii U, and the Wii U did not do well. I personally did like the Wii U a lot itself as a console. I thought it was great. It's just it was not marketed very well, and it was not supported at all very well from Nintendo. There was some damn good games in there too, but unfortunately, it didn't do well. History shows that. The sales were, I want to say, the worst Nintendo selling console ever if we include handheld. I think it even did worse than the Virtual Boy. I don't really know, actually. I should probably look that one up. I just know that it was one of the worst selling consoles overall in Nintendo's franchise. But Nintendo did something incredible. They somehow hyped up Nintendo Switch and did a great job with it. But that's not really what I want to talk about, okay? That's a different discussion for another day. What I want to talk about is games, though. Nintendo Switch games, albeit I give Nintendo a lot of crap because I always get annoyed that they never reduce the price of their games whatsoever. And on top of that, too, I don't really see any price reductions when you buy it digitally either. They tend to be always $60, whether you buy it physical, whether you buy it digitally. However, I gotta admit one thing. I don't ever really see any problems as far as like graphical glitches or gameplay glitches or bugs that hinder my ability to actually play the game normally. Now, it's one thing to be, to have glitches that help the speedrunning community. That's a whole different discussion. Those kind of glitches, those are fair. I don't care for it because I am not a speedrunner and I'm not a person that really cares, glitch hunting to find those. Those are way out of my way, and I don't really get affected by that. See, those are the kind of glitches I don't care about. Now, that's why, and the reason why I bring that up is because I do watch a lot of speedruns, and there's a lot of Nintendo games that have some crazy-ass speedruns due to, glitches that they find in the game. But most of the time, you got to do something crazy at times, or something that happens completely random within the game that you got to search for actively to produce said glitch to actually happen. And I don't really tend to, I'm not going to go out my way to do those glitches for the most part, because that's just not really my thing for the most part. So I don't really care for those glitches whatsoever. But like I said, I don't really see anything ever come out of Nintendo games that it's like, oh my God, it's completely broken. They kind of stay out of the news for the most part. So I'm like, you know what? Nintendo out there, benefit of doubt, I'd give them I'd give them a chance every single time whenever I have to put my money on a game day one. And then there's going to be another developer, and it's going to be sounding crazy to me, okay? I know. I'm gonna get so much flack for this. I can already feel it. I'm gonna get so much flack for whoever's listening to this. Bethesda. I can already hear people kicking and screaming before I even finish my statement here in a moment. Bethesda. There's only one reason why I'm giving them a pass, okay? There's only one reason why I'm giving them a pass, okay? They're under new management. We saw previously this past year that they got bought out by Microsoft. It's a huge deal, right? It was a huge deal. It's like $7 billion or something like that. I'm actually looking it up right now. Microsoft buys Bethesda, and I want to say it was like something crazy like $7.3 million. No, $7.5 billion. And it wasn't just to buy Bethesda themselves, by the way. It wasn't the Bethesda studio. I think a lot of people kind of overlooked that part. Like I'm talking about, they literally overlooked that part. Because everybody, when they heard the news, I saw a lot of posts on Twitter. I saw a lot of posts on Reddit. I saw a lot of videos on YouTube. And I'm like, did you guys actually read the article, or did you guys only see the headline? And I hate that, right? I hate only people seeing the headline and that's it. They bought the ZeniMax Media, the parent company. So we're not talking about just Bethesda themselves. We're talking about id Studio, talking about the people that created what's it called? Dishonored? There you go. That's what I was looking for. I'm pretty sure Dishonored's made by Bethesda. Oh God, I'm trying to forget things. So they bought everything that was part of that studio. So the reason why I am giving the benefit of the doubt, and I'm gonna put my trust in Bethesda again. I'm not gonna buy it now. Personally, I'm not gonna buy it day one. I'm gonna wait and see what happens. I want to see what changes happens now that Microsoft is the parent owner of Bethesda Studios and ZeniMax Media, for that matter. Because the reason why is I want to see if now we see true changes actually happen with everything. Elder Scrolls 6, I want to say that everybody is super concerned about that game because we are all worried about how the game is going to be probably using the same engine as the Morrowind engine, the creative engine, I'm pretty sure is what it's called. The creation engine, I believe is what it's called. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody can correct me if they want to. Someone let me know down below what engine they're using. But anyway, so that was the biggest fear, right? Especially with Fallout 76 being such a debacle it was. And then, it kind of puts a taint on every single other game because we're like, okay, well, these bugs are no longer charming no more. And ever since then, now everybody was looking at Bethesda so what are you going to do? How is everything going to be? How's Starfield going to be? How is Elder Scrolls 6 going to be? Well, now this changes everything. There's a new management under the hood. And Microsoft ain't playing no games, guys. They have tried to done everything correctly, it seems like, thus far, to try to right the wrongs that they did with the Xbox One. Whole different topic for another day. But they have been way more consumer friendly. At least Microsoft has. So I'm curious if that's going to have a ripple effect over to Bethesda themselves. I wonder what's going to be changing. Because if Microsoft is looking the way they are currently, and, moving the direction that they are with how consumer friendly they are, I highly doubt they're going to let all those bugs fly. And that's why I'm putting kind of my money on this. Because now that they have new management, I want to see if things change. And I'm kind of getting more excited for it. I shouldn't be excited because of how things have gone in the past. But now that there's new management in the works, and especially because it's Microsoft, and I kind of trust Microsoft a bit more because they've done really well with that Xbox Series X release / Series S release. I always get confused whenever I say the two. I'm honestly just really curious. I want to see how this goes, okay? Now, another Microsoft developer that I put my money into that I personally think that they're doing really well and that I'm excited for to see what they come up with in the future, especially now that they are starting to become more exclusive to Microsoft Studios themselves, is Obsidian. Obsidian was the biggest news that, I remember them purchasing. I remember when I first heard the news that Microsoft bought something 13 developers to put under their wing, and Obsidian was included in one of them, and I was like, that's impressive. Now, Outer Worlds came out, and I'm pretty sure that Outer Worlds was already in the works to be multi-platform for everything, so that's why they let it go. But they have games like Grounded, which personally I enjoyed. Grounded, I played it on the Xbox Game Pass. Enjoyed it quite a bit. Early access still, but I enjoyed what I saw from them quite a bit, and I was very surprised that Obsidian was able to create something like that. I really was. And now that they ended up teasing a trailer for Avowed. I don't know if anyone remembers that game, but it was the quote-unquote Skyrim knockoff that Avowed showed off during, I think it was a Microsoft press conference release, whatever they were doing. I forgot where they showed off the trailer, so forgive me on that one. It was such a while back ago. I think it was back in August when that was shown off. But I liked what I saw from that, and I really wanted to get my hands on that. And Obsidian also has Path of, Pillars of Eternity. I almost said Path of Exile for some reason. Pillars of Eternity. I played Pillars of Eternity. It's very classic. It's very, it's very classic style, table RPG style thing. I don't know how to describe it. Fallout 2 style of gameplay, if I had to, put it any way, shape, or form. And it was awesome to play. I kind of enjoyed it personally. And Avowed is set in the same universe as Pillars of Eternity. And personally, I've enjoyed Obsidian's products. I mean, we know in the past that they've done Fallout New Vegas, right? And that was a hit. In fact, it was so good that at times it seemed like Bethesda studios themselves were kind of jealous at times. It was like the big brother was being outshined by the little brother at time. Little brother came in there and just kind of like, performed better than big bro. And big bro was kind of jealous, so he kind of doesn't mention it, doesn't want it talked around him because it kind of hurts his ego. I don't know if anyone's ever seen like those awkward interviews, whenever, I forgot the guy who was like the lead in Bethesda. Someone's gonna have to like remind me. It's very distinct. 16 times the detail. But anyways, it always came off as weird because they would always kind of try to downplay the success of Fallout New Vegas. So, I've seen what Obsidian can do. And again, Obsidian's another one of those, to me personally, Obsidian's another one of those developers that I have not really seen too many major issues with, where it's like, damn, this game is so broken that I can't really do much about it. So that's another developer that I would put my trust into. So that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 6. Okay, I had CD Projekt Red in there. They're kind of like in my iffy warning sign right now. Currently, they're kind of like in the iffy. They're not. I'm not gonna discredit them just yet. I'm not gonna say like, oh my god, I can't ever touch their products because of what they've done. They're not EA levels. They're nowhere near that yet. But they're definitely on strike 1 right now. And a really big strike. It's like, yo, you weren't even, why'd you swing at that? Why'd you swing the bat at that? It wasn't even close it wasn't even close. It was like a ball. It was way out of the zone. So, they're kind of iffy on that, but that's 5 developers. So I have From Software, Capcom, Nintendo, my very controversial pick, Bethesda. Okay, and like I said, the Bethesda one is only because of one reason and one reason only. Now, if the first release is already fucked up, I'm not touching another Bethesda product. The Bethesda one was only because Microsoft has acquired them, and I'm curious to see what they are going to do now that Bethesda's owned by Microsoft, because I'm very curious. I just don't know where they're going to go with it. This could either be a rejuvenation of the company, or they could do a rejuvenation kind of like what they do with Capcom, or it's going to be like this is going to get worse than what it already was. And Obsidian are the other ones, okay? So those are my companies that I would pick day one. And I know that it's crazy for me to say that. I know it's crazy. You think after being burned day one that maybe I would stop looking forward to gaming and just kind of just be like, I'll just wait, whatever. Because I do that nowadays, right? I don't really kind of buy games day one for the most part. I really don't. And with good reason too. I mean, part of the reason is not only because I've been burned with games before in the past. That's only partial the reason. Because I have bought a lot of games day one where it doesn't work, and it really is frustrating when that happens. I'm not going to lie to y'all. But the other reason why I do tend to hold off on games nowadays is because, unfortunately, life is a thing, chat. Unfortunately, life is a thing, chat. That is the best statement that I can give to you guys. What do I mean by life is a thing, chat? I go to school, I work, and by the time I'm done with all that, I'm just too tired, and I don't feel like gaming at that point, right? At times. I do get to that point. I think everybody does. I think everybody has experienced that at some point. And the reason why that sucks is because, when you're a kid, you don't have money to buy games, right? Like myself, I got most of my games renting through Blockbuster. Crazy, I know. Blockbuster used to be a thing. Or birthday money or Christmas money to get games as gifts. That was really the only time I ever got games. So I would be lucky to get 3 or 4 games in a year. When I started working as a teenager, I started using my first paycheck that I recall. Okay. My first ever paycheck that I recall as a teenager. I bought a rotisserie chicken and I went to GameStop right afterwards and I got myself a PlayStation 3. That was my first ever gift to myself. My first ever job that I had. My first ever job, I was a quote-unquote actor as a monster for Scarowinds. I know. I have that presence. I'm aware. I love joking about myself. But yes, so this is getting into, I promise you the story is going somewhere, okay, chat? So when I had my job, The paycheck, my paycheck money, I would use it so many times to buy games that I wanted. All the freaking time, man. I'd buy a bunch of games all the time, okay? Even games that I missed out on, it was awesome because they were dirt cheap, and I would buy those games, I'd gobble them up, and just play them, right? Problem is, I was working and going to school, and I would never finish them. And eventually, if you look back there, I have a huge backlog of games. I have not touched like 1/4 of those games, chat. I have not bought 1/4 of those games. I have not played 1/4 of those games that I bought. Okay, that was for my PS4. That's for my PS4 games up there. I have a bunch of games that are on my Steam library, and I also have a lot of games that are digitally downloaded on my PS4 as well. So I bring that up because it segues into the last game that I literally bought day one at full price, and I put in my backlog at full price and never got to it. It's a very well-known story. It's a game called Horizon Zero Dawn, okay? It's a game known as Horizon Zero Dawn. You know that PS4 game that is regarded as like one of the better, games that came out this past generation? Yeah, that game, I bought it for one reason and one reason only, is because one of my friends never stopped talking about it, and he literally dragged me into his car, bring me to a GameStop to buy Horizon Zero Dawn because he just wouldn't shut up about it. It was his favorite game. Shout outs to him though. He's an awesome guy. Love him to death. But Jesus Christ, dude, that man was obsessed with Horizon Zero Dawn when that game came out. I bought the game at $60. It was about like 3 days after it came out, I want to say. Yeah, I think I want to say it was about 3 days after the game came out. Not even lying to y'all. And I didn't play it for 2.5 years. I didn't play it for 2.5 years. I didn't even open the case. It was still in a saran wrap. In fact, it was almost a meme on my in my Twitch channel of me showing off the game, because I was like, yeah, by the way, take a look at Horizon Zero Dawn. It's still in a saran wrap after 2.5 years. It's still here. I didn't touch it. Not because I didn't want to play it or anything. It's just like I just didn't have the time for it. And whenever I would play a game, I would always do something on Twitch, and I would forget about it every single time. And see, I finally opened it. I played it. I streamed the whole entire game on my Twitch channel. Once again, shameless plug in, twitch.tv/nemesisjg. Once again. Once more. I always have to shamelessly plug in my channel every time whenever I get a chance, because I've been told that you need to do that. But anyways, it was a great game. Until I found out that, I could have bought in a game nowadays for like $15 used or something on Amazon. And that is the day that I decided that I would not buy a $60 game unless I really do intend to play it day one. And I can count maybe like 2 or 3 games from the top of my head that I bought day one and played it immediately. One was Doom Eternal. That game is phenomenal, by the way. Recommend it highly to everybody. I didn't buy it day one. I bought it like maybe 2 weeks after it came out because my paycheck didn't come in. But I bought it $60 regardless, though. I did buy it for $60 because that game needed it. That game deserved it, actually. That game was something else. Resident Evil 3 remake. Yeah, Resident Evil 3 remake. And I want to say RE2 remake as well was the other game. Don't think I actually ever, I don't believe I ever bought another game full price day one, unless if I intended to play it. Because, unfortunately, life is there, man. Like, that's the thing that sucks about being an adult, right? An adult that grew up gaming, is that now you have the money to buy the games, but now you don't have the time. When I was a kid, I had all the time in the world, but I didn't have the money to actually buy the games, or have access to them. So it's crazy to me that actually is a thing. So, what games am I looking forward to this coming year? You think that I would probably stop doing that, but I, once again, am a gamer, and I'm always going to look forward to games because it's just my guilty pleasure, guys. It's just my guilty pleasure. It's not going to go. It's my drug. I enjoy it. I'm always going to play it. So what games am I looking forward to? I actually wrote these down. Because I had to. Because I actually had to look into it. It's like, what games are there that I actually really want to see? Kind of cheating because we ended up talking about it in my last topic. But Avowed, I've already mentioned it. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but, as I mentioned previously just a moment ago, Avowed, the game that was, showed off during one of Xbox's presentations. It looked like, a lot of people were titling it as the game that is, a knockoff of Skyrim, which I understand why people can think that, but I still want to play it because it looked great. Outer Worlds did an amazing job with its release, and it seems like it's a hit, so I want to see that, and I like Obsidian. I actually mentioned this a little bit earlier. Eden Ring. We have not seen too much news about it lately. We really haven't. Like, at all. Like, at all. But it is made by the original writer of Game of Thrones, and it's also made with Miyazaki. And I haven't really been too disappointed from anything that Miyazaki has made in the past, so I really want to see what Eden Ring does once it's actually out. I don't know. I think it's going to... I don't know. I'm still excited for it despite it not being used. I just hope it's not in development hell and, it doesn't end up getting forgotten and then, it gets released and then we end up having a Duke Nukem situation where it was having a lot of promise and it waited too long. And then the game came out, and it wasn't very good. There was a lot of problems. And, yeah. Another game that actually just recently got delayed. I know it's kind of crazy to hear this from me. But it did get delayed recently. It was supposed to initially come out with the Xbox Series X. Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite. Now, this game got a lot of flack. And deservedly so. I actually remember, I keep referencing these videos about him, but he is one of my favorite YouTubers of all time. So, there's a reason why I keep referencing him. So, Angry Joe. I know, I've already referenced him earlier in the podcast, but Angry Joe, I remember watching his video, and I remember there was like a point in this video that he ended up comparing the reveal trailer of Halo Infinite and then showing off Halo 4, a game that came out on 360, mind you. He didn't show off Halo 5. They showed off Halo 4 and showed off the texture work of Halo 4. And it was almost embarrassing to see how bad Halo Infinite looked in a texture standpoint. It looked laughable. And even like the enemy that they showed off looked dumb. I don't know. Like it didn't look right. But because of the backlash that Microsoft got, and deservedly so, they ended up backing the game further into 2021. I want to say like November something is what they actually pushed it back into. And now that it's actually going to have some more time, I was already excited to hear about what Halo Infinite was going to bring to the table. First of all, it is free to play multiplayer. But what interests me is that the fact that they're going open world with Halo for its story. I like open world games, okay? I think open world games, when done right, are awesome. However, there are a lot of open world games there are a lot of games that are linear that make the transition to open world, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. Okay, one game that comes to mind, although I did enjoy the game, it's still controversial, but MGS5. I remember when MGS5, it's always been like kind of a linear game for the most part. Then it went the whole open world thing, and I liked it, but I also didn't like it at the same time. There was a lot of elements that I didn't enjoy about it. That's one game I can think of from the top of my head that is, that went linear to open world. Another game that a lot of people don't really realize, Final Fantasy franchise. Final Fantasy franchise was never really open world. It was somewhat open, but it was like open with walls. I don't know if that makes sense. But then they made Final Fantasy 15. And although I did enjoy Final Fantasy 15, it wasn't the greatest, it kind of failed in one aspect to me, which is kind of like what I like about Final Fantasy. It's open, it's the storytelling aspect. And that's the problem here, right? I gave you two examples here. Metal Gear Solid, a very, very story-heavy game. And then the other game that I also just mentioned as well, Final Fantasy, which history shows that the majority of the Final Fantasy games are very story-heavy based. There's more to it, yes, but it's very story-heavy based. Halo, single-player-wise, is one of the few FPS games that I can think of that actually has a pretty damn decent story. It's always been linear, but it's going open world. I'm very interested, okay? I'm kind of like in the minority on this one. Okay, not just ethnicity wise, but also minority in in some of my opinions on Halo. had to fit that in there. But Halo, I actually enjoyed Halo more for its story than its multiplayer. Always have. Not saying the multiplayer is bad. Okay, I'm not saying the multiplayer is bad, but I always loved that Halo had co-op to play with friends for the story. And in Halo 3 ODST introduced Firefight, I think it was, right? I think it was Halo 3 ODST. It's either Halo 4, or not Halo 4, Halo 3 or Halo Reach, one of the two. Someone correct me if I'm wrong which one it is. Please and thank you. I will definitely take that correction. But I always loved having the story mode co-op aspect. That was always my favorite thing growing up playing Halo. When Halo 2 introduced that, it was awesome. It was my favorite part about the whole entire game. And thing is, like I mentioned previously, is that game was always linear, though. The story was actually really good. In my book, I thought the lore that they built with Halo was awesome. I loved the Master Chief. Arbiter was one of my favorite characters ever in the Halo franchise. And now they're going a different aspect where a game that's previously known more so for its story elements at times, it's not going open world. However, it is interesting because this game is also known for its multiplayer as well. I would say definitely more known for its multiplayer than anything else, obviously, because I would say that's more of the popular thing when Halo 2 was out. Despite it having a damn good story, I would argue and say that Halo 2 is more known for its multiplayer aspects. So I'm not as worried. But I am at the same time because I've seen this road taken before. I've seen how it's gone. It doesn't ever turn out very well. History shows it does not turn out very well. Okay? And I actually want to know in the comments section below, what are some other games that are known to be story heavy and linear? Then they go open world. It's like it didn't turn out as well as they thought. As they thought it could. Because I can think about, like I said, the first two examples that come to mind is Final Fantasy 15 and MGS for me. I'm pretty sure there's more, examples out there. And actually, I'm pretty sure there are examples out there where it's actually the opposite. Even though it was a linear, very story narrative driven game, it turned out to be a really good open world experience. So anybody can let me know if you want me to. Another game that I am excited for is kind of surprising because I haven't really heard too much about it, but it's mostly because I'm a fan of the franchise and I love top-down dungeon crawlers, Diablo 4. I'm curious as to what Diablo 4 is going to bring to the table. Diablo 3 is a game that, funny enough, it's another game that didn't do too well when it first initially released. There was a lot of flack, had a lot of criticisms for all the problems that they had with it, but then it got really good. And then Blizzard found themselves kind of in a controversy where, they ended up having Diablo Immortals only on phones. And, I kind of go back into that one and I kind of look back into retrospect of the whole debacle with the Diablo Immortals announcement. I don't really think the problem with the game was really that it came out on that was announced on mobile. That's not the issue. At least I personally don't think so, because mobile is a very popular market, okay? And honestly, a mobile Diablo, there are moments where I feel like, I look back and it's like, I think Diablo could honestly work with mobile. I think it could. The problem is that two things. One, it's been such a long time since Diablo 3's been released. The way the marketing first came out when Diablo Immortal came out, I don't know if anyone remembers it. It really did seem like they were trying to sell that, they're trying to sell to the media that this is going to be a PC full, a brand new PC game. That was the first thing. And the second thing was that they were only releasing the game on mobile. That was the other issue, I believe. Okay, so let me tackle the first one. The first problem with Diablo Immortal when it was first announced is that I want to say Blizzard said that when they were doing BlizzardCon that year. I think it was BlizzardCon. Correct me if I'm wrong once again. I will take corrections as much as I can. I'm trying to remember everything by memory right now. If you haven't noticed, I keep up with as much gaming news as I can. And something I do end up forgetting at times because there's so much gaming news that happens over the years. But when it was announced, when there was rumors, they never really said, Blizzard never said no. They never said no. Whenever they were asked the question, is this going to be Diablo 4? They never said no. That was the problem. They just left it up in the air. And that was the first problem. So you gave the anticipation for everybody. You made everybody's hopes get high. That was the first problem. Then the famous BlizzardCon happened where they announced Diablo Immortal was mobile. First of all, although Diablo seemed like its releases on consoles, mobile is a whole different story. That is a whole different kind of market, and I wish we could take like a survey to see, gamers that tend to I wish there was like an actual like survey that we could see. Because this is my small sample size that I see when I talk to gamers or whenever I, talk with my Twitch community. Gamers that play on console and PC strictly for the most part, keyword for the most part, they don't really care for mobile. So when you take like a franchise, a beloved franchise for that matter, like Diablo, and you strictly only put it on mobile, that's when the problem happens, okay? I think if they would have said this is going to be a mobile game that's on PC and also on on phone, and then eventually it's going to find its way to the PSN store and the Xbox Live store, I think we would have seen a different result. I think that it wouldn't have been LUD because everybody would have been like, well, this is a mobile game. They just stuck it into the consoles and also the PC, and they ended up putting it on Steam, and sure, whatever. It wouldn't have been as exciting. People would still gave it a lot of crap, but I don't think it would have gotten the same. I don't think it would have gotten the same issues that it did when it was announced. And the third one was Blizzard's handling of the Diablo Immortal criticism. When you have the lead dev up there saying, "Don't you guys have phones?" Like they're in shock. Like they're just shocked. Like they're just like, "I can't believe people don't like this." One of my favorite quotes ever was the one of the reporters asking a question like, "So is this an April Fool's joke?" Like I encourage everybody to go back to that announcement of that Diablo Immortal. I encourage everybody. I was like, that was like one of the most savage questions I ever heard in my whole entire life. Because the devs were not prepared for the backlash. You can see it. Go back and look at that trailer announcement. They were not ready. They needed some milk after they were done with that. After they were done announcing it and they got the backlash. They were just so in shock. It was great. But anyways, that's back to my tangent. I'm done there. Diablo 4, when it got announced, we only really saw cinematics on it. We only saw cinematic stuff on there. And I have been kind of craving I've been kind of craving another dungeon crawler, game to be out there. I played Minecraft Dungeons because I have access to the Xbox Game Pass. Me and one of my good friends, M2, a person that, one of my mods on my Twitch stream, we played Minecraft Dungeons as kind of a meme, and we kind of enjoyed it. It actually made me realize how much I miss playing Diablo, because I played a lot of Diablo 3. I enjoyed Diablo 2. I played some Grim Dawn here and there, and I enjoy it, but it's not really the same feeling for me. I don't know why, but I don't get the same feeling when I play Grim Dawn like I do the Diablo franchise, but then I also really enjoy Path of Exile. But it's been a hot minute since Diablo has seen, I guess you could say, something new and something fresh. And there is a huge fan base of the Diablo franchise, so I just want to see what they bring up. I don't even care if the game is released yet anytime soon. I just want some more news. It's kind of like Eden Ring. Eden Ring, what I was talking about. It's I just want to see something announced or seen. I just hope that it's not in development purgatory. That's it. That's all I'm hoping for. Another game that I feel like is kind of slept on and kind of forgotten about, and I'm actually kind of curious. I don't know if this game is only going to be on the Xbox Series X console or it's going to be on the PC's Game Pass. Hellblade 2. Hellblade, if anyone is a longtime watcher of my Twitch channel and has seen me and has seen me play Hellblade on stream one time, that's a game that took me by surprise. That is a game that took me by surprise. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody because that is an experience that everybody should have. One of the greatest sound engineering games I ever heard. I don't know what it's called when they have where they have sound going in multiple directions. One of my favorite things about the game is sometimes you hear things only out of my left ear or right ear. Sometimes you hear it on the top of the left ear or the top of the right ear, or sometimes in the bottom of the right ear. The sound in that game was amazing. I loved the whisperings of Senua getting mocked by, getting mocked. I'm not going to spoil what she actually has and why that's happening, but needless to say, I loved it. I love a damn good puzzle game because, a lot of people don't. I think I might be controversial when I say this, but I felt like it was a walking puzzle simulator with some combat in between. But I loved it. It was a damn good puzzle game. I do consider it a puzzle game, guys. I do consider that game to be a puzzle game because there's a lot of problem solving that happens within the game. And story-wise, phenomenal as well. I love the story in that game, and I am excited to see what will happen with Hellblade 2. It's been years since that game came out now, and Ninja Theory, you need to let me know what's coming up with that game. I have 2 more games on here that I'm excited about. Technically three, but I'm not going to get too much deep into it. Resident Evil Village, or is it Resident Evil 8? Can't really tell anymore, because originally I remember it being called Resident Evil 8, and I thought it was a very creative. Okay, they weren't calling it Resident Evil 8. They're calling it Resident Evil Village / Resident Evil 8. That was awesome because originally you could see REVILL. That was creative. I was like, that's fire. That's fire. That's fire. That was an awesome way to name it. I thought that was the first kudos to them. But then they decided to backtrack and they say, oh no, it's not RE8. Now it's its own thing. It's like, Capcom. Why? I actually am kind of curious. I don't know if I ever found an article or an interview explaining why it was no longer called RE8. I think I found one, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think that article said that they didn't mean to call it Resident Evil 8 that whole time, but it was like, are you sure? Because the trailer was highlighting in gold letters REVILL. Are you sure it was not intended? What's going on here? I think that's really all I could find in the article. I have to look deeper after this podcast is over to see if I can find anything, but I don't think I found anything on that. But Resident Evil Village, first of all, I commend Capcom for making the decision of stopping all production for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions. Going back way earlier into this podcast, remember what I was talking about with Cyberpunk 2077? That game was released on the that game was released on the PS4 and Xbox One. And I forgot to mention in that, I think part of the issue as to what happened with Cyberpunk 2077 was that I think they had way too many development projects going on at the same time, trying to make it between the Xbox One, PS4, Xbox Series X, PS5, PC, all that stuff. And I think that actually leads to a bad roadmap of trying to make a good game. So instead of dividing their focuses between a bunch of consoles, Capcom decided, let's just focus on the new gen technology because it's just not going to work out. It's going to hold us back. And that is one thing that I am glad that they made a decision. They're definitely going to lose money on that, though. With that being said, I definitely do foresee Capcom definitely would have made more money because there's just more PS4 and Xbox One consoles, obviously, because we're so early in the lifespan of the new consoles that just released. I highly doubt that we will see them make that money that they would make if they released it for everything. So, unfortunately, they're going to lose money on that. And we'll see, what the fallout that is, because you already know how this is going to go. Companies are going to make changes if they don't make the money back of what they expected to. So we'll see on that nature. But the main reason why I'm excited about Resident Evil 8 is that, one, I am a fan of the FPS aspect of Resident Evil 8. Okay, I'm a fan of it. A lot of people might call me crazy. I know that's very controversial when it comes to the Resident Evil franchise of having to change from, first of all, tank controls to third person, and then second off, going to FPS. However, I mean, if anyone knows anything about the Resident Evil franchise, and I do plan on actually having a discussion about Resident Evil and the history of it at some point in the podcast. Resident Evil was actually originally intended to be FPS. They were actually messing with it since day one in RE1 with the original RE1. If you take a look at the development interviews of it, they actually had projects that were set for the OG mansion for the character to be in first person. So I never understood that argument. And even then, Dead Aim, I think it's Dead Aim, right? The one that came out on the PS1 was also an FPS. And we've seen projects before Resident Evil 7 be an FPS before, so I never understood the outcry of it. honestly would like to know. Like, I don't know how many, like, people out there are Resident Evil fans watching this podcast, but I honestly want to know, like, what is the outcry about the game being in first person? I thought one thing that actually helped RE7 was its first person element. It really did bring a different factor because of the perspective of what the game was in. And I'm glad that it's going back. As much as I loved revisiting Resident Evil in third person with RE2 Remake and RE3 Remake, I did feel it was about time that it actually stays in FPS. I don't know why, but there's something about the FPS aspect that makes it just a little bit more creepier in my book, at least from the camera angle's perspective that it's in. So I'm excited about that, first things first. And secondly, I love that they're bringing in a lot more enemies. A lot more enemies, at least from what it looks like from the trailer. It looks like there's a vampire and a werewolf. The werewolf is confirmed. I can say that because Capcom's already confirmed that. And I think we actually see a little bit of it in the trailer, if I remember correctly. Been a while. Probably should have looked at the trailer. Do forgive me for that one. I probably should look at the trailer before I fired up this podcast. But this is literally just coming off the cuffs of my head right now. The reason why is because as much as I love the RE7, but one of my biggest criticisms of it is the molded. I love the molded. They were awesome. But that was it. That's all they really had was molded, and then the boss fights themselves. That's all there really was when it came to that. When it came to RE7, and that was like one of the biggest criticisms of the game was that there just wasn't multiple enemies at all whatsoever, and that's disappointed me a bit. And to see them it seems like in my book, it seems like Capcom read the criticisms and is correcting that, and I commend them for it. I am a fan of a game company that actually listens to the criticism and corrects it. That's a good thing in my book. That is progress. And I am excited to see what there's going to go. And the number one thing that got me excited is the story. Okay? This is not something that I really say about the Resident Evil franchise, but this is the first time I can definitely say a story in the Resident Evil franchise kind of interests me. Two reasons why. RE3 Remake, I thought that was probably the best story that there was in Resident Evil, in all the Resident Evil games. It was a damn good job. The trailer excited me because it left me mysteriously wondering about certain things. One, Chris ends up killing, what's her name? What's that girl's name? I don't know why, but I can't remember Ethan's girlfriend's name for some odd reason. We'll just call her Ethan's girlfriend. Yeah, so like it seems like you just like literally shoot Ethan's girlfriend in the face, and Chris just looks a lot more menacing and a lot darker. And it was kind of crazy because we see Chris and Neo Umbrella come out of nowhere in the end of RE7, and it just kind of shocks me because it's like, where is this going with this? Because in a good way though, because it's like making me wonder, so is Chris really the bad guy here? Is he under some kind of mind control? I mean, we've seen it before in the franchise where, we've seen Jill Valentine kind of in mind control in RE5, and it just makes me kind of excited as a fan of the Resident Evil franchise. And again, it's coming from a company that I personally really trust, and so yeah, that's really just it that I got. Another game that I know, there's actually a few games that I'm actually excited about. I know it's kind of crazy. You wouldn't think that. Is the Horizon Zero Dawn sequel. I think it's I don't think it's actually called Horizon Zero Dawn 2. I think it's called something else. But the new Horizon game that's going to be coming out at some point. I like the first Horizon Zero Dawn game. I have a lot of criticisms of the game. Like, number one being that I don't feel like the game does anything overwhelmingly special as far as like gameplay. I don't think the story is the greatest story ever. However, there's one thing that was very unique about it, and that's what made me love the game to death. Is the post-apocalyptic world, but it still looks like it's in the past. But it seems like technology is trying to take over, but Mother Nature's still there. And that was very unique. I'd never seen that. I've never seen that done in a video game. And that was what I liked about it a lot. And I loved the enemy designs. That was some of the great... I don't know if I've ever seen an enemy designs better than Horizon Zero Dawn's. Like the long neck, having to see, having to climb up on top of a long neck, and having to like open up the area of the map. I remember my first time seeing a long neck. I was terrified. It turned out it wasn't actually a bad guy the whole entire time. And then I climbed it, and it was just so breathtaking and beautiful, and it made me fall in love with the game immediately. It is also one of the best looking games that I was actually very impressed that the PlayStation 4 could pull something off like that. I will say that. It was very impressive to me, and I'm excited to see what they actually do with Horizon. Now, my question is this coming straight to PC as well? Because I don't think I saw anything about it coming to PC. I heard that it's coming out to PS4 and PS5. So that's kind of an interesting decision there. And that actually does kind of worry me a little bit. And the reason why I'm saying that is because reason why I bring that up is because, and yes, I'm looking it up right now. The new Horizon game is actually supposed to come out for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. That worries me a bit because it makes me wonder, is this game going to be held back from the old console hardware? Okay, I'm not saying that it's going to have the same problems as Cyberpunk 2077. I doubt it because it's Guerrilla Games, and Guerrilla Games is a publisher under Sony. So I don't think that Guerrilla Games is going to, or not Guerrilla, but I don't think Sony is going to allow problems to be released on the game as much as like Cyberpunk, because Cyberpunk is a third-party company and they're on their own. This is actually literally under Sony themselves. So at least the product is under Sony themselves. So I think they're going to be a lot more hands-on and overlook the project to make sure that it's running smoothly on both consoles. Now, the reason why I'm bringing it up is that I wonder if this is going to be, we're going to see limitations of the world being as open as it can be versus if it was just going to come out to a PS5. That's my biggest concern. Like, how held back is this game going to be? Just simply because it's coming out on the PS4. Now, if it was coming to PS5 and the PC, I would not be as worried. Because from my understanding, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are phenomenally strong consoles for what they are. Not compared to, like, the previous generation of consoles. So, that's really all I'm worried about. That is all I'm worried about. How held back is this game going to be just simply because it's going to be coming out for both consoles? The one from the previous generation and the one currently. So we'll see when the time will tell. And yeah, I had to look it up to make sure that I was right because I remember hearing that it was coming out for PS4. I don't remember if it was, but it is. It is. I got another game, but it's definitely, I believe this game is actually coming out only to PS5 though. And it's only because I'm a big fan of this franchise. And I'm just going on a tangent right now, guys. I am definitely going out on a tangent on this one. One game that I'm actually really excited for that I don't know if it's coming out really in 2021. I really haven't heard too much news about the game since its announcement. Is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, the new Ratchet and Clank game. That's a game that I've been kind of like, just kind of crazy about, because when I saw the trailer come out, when it revealed the PS5 and the game that they're coming out with, ooh, that looks so beautiful. And I'm excited about it because, one, I've always been a fan of Ratchet and Clank. It's one of the first games that I remember playing on my PS2, back when the original came out. And I was very impressed with the game when it came out on the PS4 when they rebooted the franchise. I am glad that the game seems like it did well. And the reason why I say it seems like it did well is because there's a sequel to it. So I'm going to assume that it did well. And I am excited to see what Insomniac is going to do back at the helm making this game. I don't know why, but I'm just excited about it, okay? Like, maybe I'm just a fanboy in me. But I think part of the reason why I am excited for this game is just simply because, like, I really was impressed with the first game that came out for the reboot. And there was a lot of problems with it. I know there's a lot of people that did not like it. I personally thought it was very cinematically pleasing to the eye, and I thought it was very fun with the gadgets that they brought in. So that's another game that I love that they're gonna come out with. Lastly, a game that maybe I might be asking too much. I don't know if this game's gonna be coming out on PlayStation 5 strictly though. I feel like it's gonna be coming out for everything. I'm pretty sure. And I'm actually looking it up now, and it also worries me once again, It's Hogwarts Legacy. The role playing, I think it's an MMO as well. I think it's not even just a. I don't even think it's just an RPG. I think it's like an MMO as well. But anyways, it's the what's it called? It's the Harry Potter game that's supposed to be coming out later in 2021. At least is what is announced so far. I don't think it's gonna come out 2021, but one can hope. Because I'm a Harry Potter fan. I don't know how many people are Potterheads like me, but I also really like Harry Potter video games. I don't know if anyone's actually played Harry Potter video games. Like, I feel like they're one of the only movie-based video games that ever did kind of well in my book. Spider-Man maybe actually, but I quite like Harry Potter. I've always been kind of a fan. In fact, it was kind of like my ex that got me into it, and it was one of the few things that I've actually really appreciated because I had fun watching them. Now, I want to play the game. Now, I'm actually curious to know later down the line what they're going to be going for here. Is it going to be its own story? I'm honestly curious. One of my biggest things is I wonder if it's going to be, based on what's it going to be based on. Is it going to be based on a whole new story? Because you set your own adventure kind of thing, and you're gonna come out and just make your own story based on quests and whatnot. Or is it going to be more so based on the actual J.K. Rowling's books, and you just happen to be a character that's living during the times with maybe Harry Potter accomplishing something or something of that nature. That's what I'm kind of curious about. Definitely have a lot of questions when it comes to the Hogwarts Legacy game itself. So that's those are the games that I personally have looking into 2021 myself. And like I mentioned previously, I mean, I know that I shouldn't get excited about anything as far as games are concerned. I know I shouldn't, but like I said, it's kind of a guilty pleasure of mine that I'm always going to be excited for a game just really because I'm a gamer, guys. And gaming, as far as for me, is kind of like my escape with the real world, especially with how things are nowadays with 2020. 2020 has been kind of an interesting year. I mean, I think we're all living in it. It's been kind of like an isolation kind of year because of COVID and whatnot. I hope everyone has been healthy. And I'm just glad that, it seems like sales are doing pretty well ever since COVID happened. And even though despite COVID being the thing, we do have new consoles being released. Now, personally, I didn't buy those consoles despite it coming out. I was thinking about it, but it kind of goes back to what I mentioned previously as to why I don't buy, consoles not consoles, but video games day one. But, kind of the reason is the one thing for this, okay? So I was an early adopter of the PS4. I actually bought a day one PS4. And this is another story time, I guess you could say. 3 stories and 2 stories in one podcast. Holy crap. But I was a day one buyer of a PS4. I actually remember it vividly. It was actually very random how I ended up getting a PS4. So I remember I went to one of my best friends in high school. I went to his house. And I ended up going to his house, and he wanted a PS4. He wanted a PS4, and I just happened to be at his house, and he was just like, yo, do you want to get in line and try to get a PS4? That was literally all he asked me. He literally said, do you want to get in line? The PS4 looks hype. Let's go get one. I thought he was kind of just joking at the time. Turns out he really wasn't. It turned out that he really wanted to get a PlayStation 4, so I tagged along with him. I asked my mom, can I borrow her credit card? I'll pay her back by next week. And to my surprise, they're like, yeah, sure, go for it. They were supposed to say no. Initially, they were supposed to say no, but at least that was my idea. They're gonna say no. That was my plan. I wasn't planning on them to say yes. I just wanted to be able to get out of it because my friend, he just would not shut up about it. I love my friend. He's one of my best friends for life, and we still talk to this very day. But I never told him this. It's like but he was definitely one of those friends where he wouldn't take no for an answer. So even though you told him no, he would come up with a reason to convince you to do it anyway. Okay, so and that was kind of my way of trying to get out of it, was trying to get my parents to say no. so I could get it, so I wouldn't get a PlayStation 4. Failed somehow, tremendously. Don't get it. So here I am. We get dropped off at a Best Buy. We're in line. No way in hell. I'm seeing people already outside in the blistering cold. Okay, it's November. I'm pretty sure the release of the PlayStation 4 was November. I'm actually going to look this up as the story is going on. But yeah, so I'm in the blistering cold. Seeing a bunch of people waiting in the blistering cold to get a PlayStation 4. I've always seen news of people, of lining up to get like some kind of like crazy ass product, whether it be Jordans or, a new console, a new iPhone, a new Samsung Galaxy. I never actually believed it that people actually did that like as crazy until I actually did it myself. I became the thing that I said I would never do. I waited in line on November 15, 2013. Yep, November 15, 2013. I waited in goddamn line to wait for a PlayStation 4. When I saw the line, I was thinking to myself, there ain't no way we're going to get a PlayStation. There's no way we're going to get a PlayStation because there's already a bunch of people waiting for it. Come on, bro. Ain't no way. So we wait there an hour. I want to say it was like sub-freezing degrees. I want to say it was like 29 degrees Fahrenheit. Celsius-wise, for you guys that live everywhere else around the globe, because let's be real, a majority of us do not use Fahrenheit. I would say we're kind of outclassed on this one. That is negative 1.6 degrees Celsius is what that is. And I don't know why I was waiting in there, man. I guess I was just like hanging out with my friend and whatnot. But there's like 12 people in front of us. I want to say that he was 13, I was 14. And the guy that works at the Best Buy store comes out and announces that there are 15 PlayStation 4s in stock that are available for people that do not have pre-ordered PlayStation 4s. So I was 14. The guy behind me was 15. He was the final guy to get a PlayStation 4. All we had to do was just wait in line for like, I think we were literally there at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And we waited all the way till midnight because they weren't allowed to release the console until midnight itself. Shout out to my best friend's mom, because my best friend's mom would always call him to make sure he's okay, make sure that I'm okay, and would ask if she wanted her to bring us food to eat. I don't remember if she did or not. I think that she did. I think at one point she even brought me a jacket or something, or a blanket. I can't remember. I'm kind of fuzzy. It's been such a long time, guys. It's almost been like 7 years since I actually bought a PlayStation 4. It's a thing that's part of my past there. But what was crazy to me, guys, was pretty much I had people like offering me triple the price to take my line to get a PlayStation 4. If I was a grown-up me now, I'd probably let him have it, because there was literally a guy offering me like $10,000 to take my spot so he can get a PlayStation 4. I don't know why he didn't just pre-order it, because it seemed like he really wanted this damn thing, especially because he had $2,000. He even showed me the money too. He was trying to hand it to me. He literally put the money in my hand. He literally grabbed my hand. I'd probably going to fight the guy nowadays, but he literally grabbed my hand and put the money in my hand. I'm just sitting there like, bro, this is really happening to me right now. That somebody's literally asking me to get a spot to get a PlayStation 4 and whatnot. I thought that was the craziest thing ever. But needless to say, I waited it out. Me and my best friend, we got a PlayStation 4. It's funny because like the guy at the store was shocked as to why I didn't buy any games with my PS4. It's because at the time I had 2 games that were, that was weird, because like PlayStation was doing this weird conversion thing where it's like, if you bought a game on the PS3 but then you upgraded to a PS4, it was like a code on the box that allowed you to put the PS3 disc, but the code downloaded the game from the PSN store on the PS4, and as long as you had the PS3 disc, it would read it, but you were playing the digital version of the game. So I had 2 games. So I had Assassin's Creed 4 and I had Battlefield. It was Battlefield 4. Yeah, Battlefield 4. It was Battlefield 4. And that's the reason why I didn't buy any games. So people were so shocked as to why I wasn't buying any games to go along with it. But the reason why I did not enjoy, that kind of killed that it kind of killed me ever buying a console day one ever again is not really because of like, I never really had any problems with my console or anything. That's not really it. Like a lot of people, I remember a lot of people saying that their day one consoles had problems. My console still works to this very day. Literally the same PlayStation that I own, the same PlayStation 4 that I own, still working to today. It's still kicking, it's still alive. It's killing it. But the reason why I was very disappointed was because looking back on it, it was one of the worst. It was like one of the worst things I ever like purchased. Not because the console was bad, not because I had problems, because there was literally no games on when I bought my PlayStation 4. I'm not even joking to you guys. Like the games that were released day one on the PlayStation were not very good. I actually have the list pulled up right now. So day one PS4 games, you got Battlefield 4. I owned that game because I had my PS3 version already. So that's the reason why I bought that. There was Killzone Shadowfall. I've never been a fan of the Killzone franchise. Except for maybe Killzone 3. I like Killzone 3. That was an exception. But that was really because it was very pleasing to the eye and it was eye candy. And that's why I enjoyed that game so much. There was Gun, but that was like an indie side-scrolling shooting game that was on the PSN store. There was Need for Speed Rivals. I don't really care for Need for Speed. There was Warframe. I mean, it's popular now, but I didn't care for Warframe. That was free to play. There was apparently an Angry Bird Star Wars game, which is something that I didn't care for. There was Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which, again, I owned that game, and I had the code, because once again, it was a game that I bought on my PlayStation 3. Actually, I think that game, now I think about it, guys, I think that was actually a Christmas gift that I ended up getting. Was it? No, it wasn't. What am I talking about? No, because the console came out in November. Scratch that. I don't know why I had Assassin's Creed 4. I don't remember why I had it. I've never been a fan of Assassin's Creed like that. But for some reason, I had Assassin's Creed 4, and I already bought it, so that was there. There's Black Blade Retribution. I don't even remember what that game was. Call of Duty Ghost. That's a topic for another day when I actually make the podcast of me just strictly talking about my history in Call of Duty. I'm not going to get into Call of Duty Ghost. That'll probably be an episode on its own, chat, of me literally just talking about my history of Call of Duty. To make a long story short, I used to be a big fan of Call of Duty. Played a lot of it with my best friends. Call of Duty Ghost will forever leave a sour taste in my mouth, and I will talk about it when I make that episode on the podcast. There was Contrast, which is an indie game again, once more. I kind of like that game. I remember that game. That game was fun. There's DC Universe Online. Didn't care. FIFA 14. Don't care. Flower. Looks pretty fun, but I didn't buy it. Injustice Gods Among Us. I didn't care for Injustice. Just Dance 2014. There's Knack. It was okay. I remember Knack. It was okay. I didn't buy it, but I played it like way later down the road. I actually bought the game because it was like on a sale for like $10, and it was okay. But remember, it was a debut game, and I want to say the game was $40 when it first came out. I don't think that was a $60 game. I think that was actually a $40 game. That might be one of the rare games that actually didn't release at $60. I want to say it was only $40 when it first came out. Lego Marvel Superheroes, which I like Lego video games, but I'm not going to buy Lego. That's not going to be something that, that I'm going to be bragging about as a day one buy. Madden NFL 25, the 25-year anniversary. Madden, don't care for Madden. Hate Madden. It's stupid. NBA 2K14, I do like NBA 2K, but I didn't care for it either because, again, this is day one products, guys. This is day one products. Skylanders, don't care for Skylanders. The Playroom, I don't know if anyone remembers the Playroom. That was interesting. That was that PS4 camera back when they were trying to, promote the PS4 camera as a thing. Y'all remember that? I don't know if y'all remember that. I don't know if y'all remember the Kinect and the PS4 camera. I actually remember that back then before the Xbox got a lot of flack for it. It was originally intended to actually come with the PlayStation 5 when they were first releasing it. But that's another topic for another day. Because when I talk about more so about Microsoft and their turnaround at some point, because I definitely want to delve into that topic at some point. Because especially I want to wait on that because right now Xbox is doing really well personally in my book. I think they're doing really well. But I want to see later down, maybe in a year or so, how things play out when things actually start, coming out and whatnot. There's Trying to and Super Motherload, but so those are all the games that came out day one when the PlayStation 4 was launched. And so here's the problem that I had, okay? Debut-wise, god-awful, okay? But you want to know why I was okay with it at the time? Why I was okay with it at the time? I was a Battlefield 4 guy. Loved Battlefield. And when I heard that Battlefield was going to have 32 on 32 players and run 60 FPS, sure, I think it only ran at 900p. It didn't run at 1080p, but as long as it ran at 60 FPS, I was okay with it. And it was 32 on 32, I was hyped. And the graphics looked stunning at the time on the PS4. It really did look stunning. Problem is, the game, I actually mentioned this earlier, the game didn't run very well. Actually, it didn't even work. It didn't work for 2 weeks, it seemed like. I think the only thing you could do was TDM for like almost 2 weeks. So they botched that launched. And then there was nothing to play on a debut. So I literally was sitting there with a PS4 with nothing to play. I played an AC4. I like Black Flag. Don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorite assassins. It's actually one of my favorite games that I've played. Honestly, it is one of my favorite games I ever played. But I didn't really buy anything for my PlayStation 4 for a long time because there really wasn't anything to play. I think like later down the line, like in the springtime, Infamous Second Son came out. But that was about it for a while. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, debut-wise, release-wise, it took almost like a year, it felt like. I might be wrong on my timetable. I'm probably over-exaggerating. But I really don't think I bought anything for almost a year on my PS4. The only game I had was literally Battlefield 4, not because I only cared about it 4. It was literally because it really did seem like there was nothing coming out anytime soon. I want to say that they didn't start picking up exclusives until like maybe a year and a half into the actual console's lifetime. No, I'm honestly thinking about it. Like, anybody can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to look at the comment section if anyone comments on this. I honestly to God think that I don't think there was ever like a quote-unquote like console killer until like maybe Bloodborne came out. And now it's like almost a year and a half in. I think that game came out like in 2014, 2015, I think. I'm looking at it right now. When did Bloodborne release? I'm looking at this right now. Bloodborne release? Yeah, March 24, 2015. That's actually, yeah, that's like a year and a half into the actual life cycle. Because November 13th is what I said? 2013? So yeah, about a year and a half into it. I want to say literally games did not start coming out for the PlayStation 4 until like a year and a half into it. And that is when I learned my lesson. Don't buy a console day one. Don't buy a console day one. Because it's usually only like one game or two games, like for my example, that come out and then games don't really show up until like a year and a half later or 2 years later down the line. And in those games, by the time then, the console starts actually showing the power that it really has as well. So that's the other thing too. So that's what I thought that was kind of just crazy to me to actually like learn about. It was like, that I actually felt like I learned is that I learned that you don't buy consoles day one. So that's why I don't do it anymore. When the Switch was announced, even though it was cheap, wasn't going to buy it day one. When the new consoles were released, as much as I was really stoic for Demon's Souls Remake, I didn't really see, unfortunately, a lot of the games that I wanted to play, like I mentioned just a moment ago that I mentioned in the, what games am I looking forward to in 2021. That's the problem. A lot of those games that if Sony released all those games that I was talking about with like Horizon Zero Dawn and Ratchet and Clank, a Rift, or the Hogwarts game came out and whatnot, I would be all over the new. I would be all over the PS5. But there's only Demon's Souls. There's only one game, and so unfortunately, that's a single player game as well. That game only has so much I can do before I actually stop playing it because, I love the Souls franchise. I do. Demon's Souls is not exactly the longest game that's out there, so it's like I don't know if I really want to buy it. So that's why I never actually ended up buying. That's why I don't end up buying day one consoles anymore. For that reason, because I just don't see there's really much of a point, especially because on top of that too, Thankfully, I didn't have this problem, but it seems like, day one consoles tend to have problems when they're released. Like, for example, like, I don't know if it's officially fixed, but I can remember when the Nintendo Switch had Joy-Con drifting problems. If anyone doesn't know, it's like, when it doesn't know is that sometimes, like, even though you don't push it in a certain direction on your analog stick, it'll move itself. Sometimes the controller stick will actually move in that direction, even though you don't really input that movement. It'll start, like, doing it on its own a bit. And it seems like there are early reports that PS5's new controller is also doing that same problem. So that's the other reason why I actually don't even bother with buying day one consoles either. It's just because, like, it seems like the console tends to have some kind of issue, and then it starts getting resolved with the later consoles. And then on top of that too, right? I'm going to bring it back a little bit to the past, like with the Xbox 360 Red Ring of Death. How, I don't know how many, like, I don't know if people, like, kind of forgotten about it. Because it seems like, it's been such a long time ago. But if you remember, like, the OG Xbox 360s, the white ones, those 360s, I want to say, like, there was, like, a high rate, like a 30%, like, rate that the Xbox 360 console would red ring itself and just overheat and die before you had to replace it. But then eventually Microsoft would make a better console, like a better Xbox 360, that resolved that issue. And then on top of that too, I think of the PlayStation 3, right? When the PlayStation 3 first came out, you had two versions of it, right? You had the 20 gigabyte console that had, I don't even think the 20 gigabyte console had a Wi-Fi on it. I think it was only a LAN cable. And then I think the 60 gigabyte had Wi-Fi enabled into it, had a Wi-Fi on it, and was $600 though. It was only 60 gigs. I mean, you could play everything though. Everything was fully backwards compatibility, and it was kind of insane when I look back into it. But eventually, you had a Slim come out that was way cheaper and had a lot more storage to it. Sure, you took out the backwards compatibility parts to it, but it was way cheaper, and it was also a lot more slim. So there's always a console that ends up coming out that ends up having more storage. And it seems like it's more efficient, because that's what I ended up learning about, like the efficiency of the PS3 Slim. Apparently, like, your downloads were a lot faster on the PS3 Slim versus like the older PlayStation consoles. Not saying that was great, but it was noticeable. And when you download something from, like, when you had to download an update on the PlayStation 3 Slim versus like the OG, like Fat Boy, oh god, it took forever to download something from that thing compared to the two. So that's the other thing, that's what I'm getting into, is like there always seems to be kind of like an issue that's like detrimental to the consoles when you buy the OG, like, initial release product. The debut games are just no good, in my opinion, half the times. And then finally, pretty much, that there always seems to be a console that eventually comes out that just seems way more efficient. Now, only time will tell when the new consoles, are out, for a lot longer, and see how they do. Especially, I'm more curious about the digital editions, more particularly the Xbox Series S and how that's going to do. But that's really, like, kind of the things about it. Is like, that's why I'm not really, like, I've never really, like, got myself super excited to buy one. Because now I just kind of, like, wait it out nowadays to see how the consoles do and what people are saying and what problems are arising before I go full in and buy it. I think I waited a full year to buy my Switch. So I'm probably thinking that I'm going to end up buying the new consoles maybe about a year later. Hopefully by then there'll be finally games coming out for them. That's actually just my biggest hope, honestly, is just to see if games will come out for the, for the new consoles, honestly, anytime soon. And, based on the games that I've already told, that I mentioned in the previous topic, that I think by then we'll probably see a lot more games come out for them. All right, guys, we're going to be wrapping up the podcast here. I appreciate you guys if you made it to the very ending of the actual podcast episode itself. If you guys only watch my segments that I ended up breaking this down into, I appreciate that too as well. But guys, I appreciate you guys being in the first episode of the Man Cave podcast, like podcast that is all about just discussing video games, gaming news, my thoughts on it, my thoughts on what's out there, or just my history with gaming in general. Or just any game that I want to talk about. But guys, take care. It's been your boy MCG. I've been your host, and I hope you guys tune in for the next episode. Take care, guys.